Fists of Fame.
How about we now get into our list of best fights of the year, and we have multiple categories for this because it's kind of I don't really like to list out stuff. I just hate lists. What's like?
Well, you watch Mojo?
Ooh, shade. So I personally put them into different categories. Last year, I separated them into 3 categories, which were 1 versus 1, group, and then creative fights. And then first off, we can start with the honorable mentions. I don't know if you made a list of honorable mentions. I did. Okay, so these are the movies that didn't make those first 3 lists, but I still think about it because I like what they did.
Okay.
So I'll start off with the first one. Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Hey, it's a comic book movie. This. Your favorite.
Next year I mentioned Blue Beetle. I know it.
But yes, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 has a very, very impressive stitched together one take. It is the perfect culmination of real camera and digital CGI camera, because you have the CGI characters fighting alongside the human characters, and so mashing them all together it looks like a really, really large endeavor because it is a one take, camera zooming around in this large hallway, and all the characters get their moment to fight, and the camera is always perfectly framing them in a way so that they just look cool or just visually appealing. It's like a living comic book panel, almost. Like everybody's hitting these perfect poses. And it probably would have been in one of the actual categories, but as I rewatched it, I noticed it's a lot more shooting as opposed to actual hand-to-hand combat, because a lot of those characters wield the weapons and lasers, and only a few of them actually do fighting stuff. So I just bumped it down to honorable mention.
Well, I didn't watch Guardians. I don't know if I have any honorable mentions from the quick jab / general review category. Like usually, it's like I think the only real honorable mention I have in my mind is from the roundup. No Way. Was it No Way? What's the subtitle? I was about to say No Way Home. Yes, the wrong
roundup.
movie.
No Way Home.
Yes.
When Ma Dong-seok punches Spider-Man
in the face. Yes. I'd say that the whole movie. I mean, if you listen to our review of that, like we talked praises about that film. Like we generally enjoyed it. Granted, we didn't even see every movie in the franchise, but in the series, but still entertaining movie. Like Ma Dong-seok is awesome in it, from a acting and a physical performance standpoint in terms of the choreography. But I wouldn't say that any of the choreography was so. It was definitely very unique for sure, but I wouldn't say that the choreography was like it really stands out and shines compared to like other movies that we watched this year. But overall, like I can't think of any specific one that was better than the next. Like every single fight in that was like so unique in that like the boxing choreography was so unique and really stood out for sure. And and I think that overall like the movie is just pretty enjoyable. So, but like at the same time, like I definitely feel like it stays in that honorable mention territory.
Yeah,
it's like you definitely need to call it out for sure.
Yeah, I really like that movie, and I was wondering if it would go anywhere, but ultimately not really. I rewatched some of the fights, and some of the things we were saying were, I just wish it went a little longer, because he's so powerful. He literally knocked people out in a few moments, and then you're just like, oh, that's it. Like it's like anti-choreography. I've mentioned that a few times. Like,
yes,
it's good, but then you kind of want more.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of honorable mentions this year. Like, it's either we're gonna talk about it or we're gonna. Yeah, it's either something that's gonna be like on my actual list, or it's gonna be No Way Out. no way out, right? No, not No Way Home. The roundup, yeah.
Right. Okay, so I got a few. So we kind of talked about it already, but The Killer, the Brute fight with Michael Fassbender, that was on there for my honorable mention, and then also Renfield. We talked about this. Like, that just had a really funny fight where Nicholas Hoult rips off the arms of like a SWAT team guy, and he starts using them like double-bladed swords, like swinging around, dismembered arms, and just starts slapping people with it, and it's hilarious. I wanted the movie to just have like gory body horror fights, and it doesn't do it. It's unfortunately, it's not as funny as I hoped it would, but I remember seeing that fight and thinking, oh god, this is awesome. I wish there was like 90 minutes of just this. It reminded me of like Ricky O a little bit, so I think that's why it was.
That's all you have to say to get me to watch that. I still have not seen that. But yeah, it's definitely on my list for sure. Okay. I'm sure you have a much larger list than I do. So, well.
So here's a weird one that I wanted to talk about, but it just doesn't really fit anywhere. And here's how I found out how to fit it somewhere, because I completely forgot. So the movie Bottoms is a high school comedy about two lesbian girls who start a fight club so that they could potentially sleep with their, fellow students. It is such a weird movie, and I loved it. This is like my sort of comedy. It's so strange. I don't like a pretty new director, Emma Silgman. Haven't seen anything she's done. She just did one more movie than this, but like, man, I don't even know how to describe it. Just the premise of these girls like trying to coerce other girls into their quote unquote fight club, and then teaching them how to defend themselves, when ultimately they're kind of preying on them potentially. It's odd, and there's actually a few fight scenes, and it feels like they're all younger actresses. They weren't really trained to do on-screen fighting, so it's a lot of your typical haymakers or stunt doubles and whatnot. And it's fine. It's more of a comedy that they're leaning into, so it's completely passable, and even forgettable in terms of the action. It's just so strange and so funny. I wanted to call it out. I don't know anywhere else I would be able to talk about it, so I'm mentioning it here.
All right, keep it going, Zero.
All right, so my last one, I want to give a shout out. Not really like a shout out, but I wanted to highlight Michelle Rodriguez. She had two decent fights this year. I feel like I don't really see her. Not like I don't see her too much. I guess in terms of fight scenes, I don't really see her called out. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to do that. She was in Fast X, a movie that everybody wants to forget. I actually think that movie is hilarious. I thought it was so stupid, and I enjoyed so much of it, but I had to be on my phone when everybody started talking because I could care less. But it's actually, the movie's kind of entertaining, and she has a decent enough fight with Charlize Theron. Actually, they beat the shit out of each other. It's fine. It's okay.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Okay.
But she actually has a pretty good fight in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, you mentioned this movie.
Yeah. I really. It's such a short fight, but it flows so well into each other. She's a kind of a heavy brute character. She's just body slamming, clotheslining these people. We're swerving in and out of these. I think they're knights that are trying to behead her while Chris Pine is hilariously quipping and making comments while he's trying to get out of the ropes. But yeah, her moves are pretty good. And I don't really recall her having too many fight scenes that I can think about in the past. So I just use this opportunity to call her out.
Okay. So, and then next year, you're going to call her out in like Fast 11 because, you know, this fucking series will not end.
I mean, if she fights in a car with somebody else who's also in a car, does that count as a fight scene?
No, Zero. The obvious solution to keep this franchise from going stale is that now instead of fighting in a car or fighting outside of a car, she just has to fight a car, like just like with her bare fists.
Oh my god! Okay, that has to happen now. They just need to fight cars.
Yes.
I think we can move on to now the real categories. So I have 6 films divided into 3 different categories. I don't know if you did this on your end, but I think we can start from the bottom.
Sure.
And then, from the... Yeah. So let's do that. I have 2 films that I put under creative. Creative is the category where I feel the fights did something interesting, something different that's not just about choreography. It could be about cinematography. It could be about using the environment in some sort of different or unique sort of way. So my first one is Kill Boksoon. There is a group fight where Jeon Do-yeon, she is fighting everybody in the kitchen, and it turns into this nice orbiting camera sort of fight scene where she is fighting in one side of the room and another character is fighting on the other, and the camera is orbiting from one location to the next, so you can see her fighting in one of the rooms, and something she does in one of the rooms can actually affect what's going on in the other room. And the camera is just constantly orbiting around so you can see what's going on. It's beautiful. I love it. I'm very high praise for it when we talked about it in our discussion, but visually, the orbiting camera, it's been done to death now. Every single fight scene does it. Like, how do you hide mediocre choreography? Oh, just orbit the camera around the characters. It'll make it look interesting because you're constantly changing elevation, you're constantly changing perspective. It's offering this new visual way, like adding a new visual variety to maybe stale fighting, right? Instead of just having a static camera or just having shaky cam, well, let's now have the camera just encircling the fighters. So I'm kind of sick of seeing orbiting cameras now, but I think this is a very clever use of the orbiting camera because they're bridging 2 different fights together by constantly seeing how one interacts with another.
I don't have something for that category you just mentioned, most creative fight of the year. But I will say, I did like the last fight in Kill Boksoon. Not that it was a good fight, but because it was creative, like you said. It's just the many ways of her envisioning how she will lose the fight, and just seeing her die in many different angles, different spots, different point of views in the room. That was kind of, it's a really nice visual. It even kind of incorporates a little bit of not a full orbiting camera effect, but does the camera does rotate a little bit around as you see many iterations of the fight going on, possibilities. All that was nice and all. I think that's the closest to creative. What was the other one? You mentioned orbiting cameras, and one that came to my mind, and this is not at all a shout out. This was the one of the Jackie movies, Hidden Strike. Where I immediately think of an orbiting camera. I'm like, oh yeah, we're talking about orbiting cameras and how we're sick of them. Well, how about an orbiting camera that literally makes you feel sick? Because that one was fucking terrible.
It starts out on the ground orbiting around the characters, and then it goes up into the ceiling, and you're looking down, and the characters are just spinning.
Yeah, it's like a top. Like when you get to closer and closer to the center and it's rotating, it moves faster. So at a certain point, like you're spinning too fast and you can't see what's going on.
Okay, so my next creative fight, so 2 per category, is Fight Against Evil 2, the car fight with Liu Fengchao versus female officer, because god damn it, I cannot find that actress's name. I would love to shout her out, or I would love to look up information if she has done anything else. But man, such a great creative use of the environment. You have Liu Fengchao, who is handcuffed in the back seat, and he basically is trying to choke out the female officer because his feet are free. So he's trying to hook her closer, and she is just struggling in that front seat, turning around, using everything in the car to fight back against him. And it's so beautiful how the camera is just right in there with them. It feels close, it feels tense, and it's just great to see how many like interesting angles they can do inside this tiny little car.
Okay, that's a really good candidate. I was gonna say that if I have a one-on-one fight, that's actually up there for me. So yeah, that would. I guess if we're talking creativity, that really would be the one that's like the most unique of the year. I can't think of anything else that's like more than that. But wow, I did not think about this like thoroughly enough.
So now we're on to group fights. Group fights involve more than 2 people fighting. So I got, again, 2 candidates here. So first one goes to John Wick 4. This is now many to choose from here because there's a lot of fights in this movie. I'm going to narrow it down a little to the assault on the Continental Osaka. And in this moment, there's still lots and lots of fighting going on, but I'm going to narrow it down even more to when Keanu Reeves is using nunchucks against multiple assailants. Because, man, I've been getting a little, not sick, I don't want to say sick. The John Wick fighting style has become a little samey for me. Like, hey, BJJ into gun, kata, shoot somebody in the head, choke somebody out, so on and so forth. So when this whole group fight started, I was thinking, okay, this is kind of the same of what we've been seeing in the first 3 movies. So to see how the John Wick character would tactically use nunchucks, a very, very random and variable type of weapon, it was so refreshing because everything before that was just like, hey, look, we're grabbing people, we're rolling on the ground with them, we're shooting them in the head, everything's a headshot, everything's so perfect in this sort of like dancey, fighty, choreographed way. To see this was so different. I was just really, really happy.
Yeah.
Because also, when you think about nunchuck fights, everyone does Bruce Lee. Everybody does Bruce Lee. So to see something different, I was just so thankful for this.
For me, like, because I knew John Wick was gonna at least show up on some lists. If it was gonna be a group fight, it was definitely gonna be that portion of the Continental Siege, or it'd be at the end when it's they're climbing the stairs towards the end. But I don't really think that's necessarily the fight, because this is a lot of gunplay, but it's just because it feels very relentless. Right, that whole final action segment, it really does feel like you're in it with him and Donnie as they're trying to climb these stairs, and it's just like will not stop. And especially with that huge stunt, which like everyone's already talked about, like to great detail. Like that's a major fall that Keanu stunt double takes throughout that. talking about group fights here.
Do you have any on your list?
No, definitely. That was going to be it. But I was going to cheat a little bit because I was going to say Extraction 2.
Oh. That's my second movie, Extraction 2.
Okay, Extraction 2. No, I mean
the prison yard.
The prison break. I mean, like obviously, if it's not the prison break, like what else would it be, right? Like, I mean, that would technically be a group fight. Like, I think if I had to narrow it down, it's specifically when they get into the yard.
Yeah, the
like that area. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, it starts in the prison, and like it.
Then it goes outside.
It goes outside, and it's a 20 minutes. Stitched together one take. But if we're talking specifically where during that segment, then yes, it's in the prison yard. Like it's very well done, only because like it really does feel like you're in there with them, because like the cameraman feels like they're just diegetically like placed into the spot, and you're just like you are on the ground level with these characters. Really, well done. In terms of some camera trickery that they did, like I really like that it shifted back and forth between like having that like GoPro-esque like mounted on the camera, mounted on the actors, kind of
like the waist mounted, so you can see it's right in his face. You see the reaction. Yep. He gets because he gets hit in the back of the head, and it goes into his dazed POV, and then suddenly he go's out of it. It's just so crazy how Sam Hargrave was able to just blend those scenes together. And when you go frame by frame, you can see it, but but in motion, you're just like, oh fuck, wow.
Yeah. No, the way that they dismounted or unmounted the camera and was able to fluidly transition to like, okay, the camera's no longer attached to him, and just continue organically moving throughout the scene. Like, it's great. It's really well done.
All right, let's get to it then. Our final films, at least for me anyway, the 1 versus 1. I don't know how many choices do you have for this, if you have any?
I have 2.
I have 2 as well. Okay. I have a feeling we might have the same choices.
Well, I don't know. This was hard for me because like this is the one I spent the most time with, obviously. But I don't know. I really like Fight Against Evil 2. Like, I like the bathroom scene a lot, because it was very. But then this was hard because like it was between this and Bad City. Bad City, we already talked about before, but that last fight between
Ozawa Hitoshi and Yamaguchi Yoshiyuki.
Yes, that's right. Man, that final fight. I think the only reason why it probably would take one step down from, and I think it would kind of lose out to Fight Against Evil 2, is because there's cuts. And cuts to other fights. That's the only reason. If it didn't do that, it would be perfect. Because it's so intense. There's so much grappling. Like interspliced with like just pure striking. It's like they're moving so aggressively. And again, it just blows my mind that he's just an older gentleman and he's moving as fast as he is. And so, and just like intent to kill behind every movement. I can't speak highly enough of that fight. It's really well done. But I think I would still, at the end of the day, I think in terms of MMA fights, which is surprising. Like we don't, there's not a lot of MMA fights like overall, but like somehow this year, like there's 2 really good ones. Like Fight Against Evil 2 like really had an amazing fight in that bathroom. I did not expect a mainland Chinese movie to like one just be competent, but also two this fight was just overall like super intense. There's a lot of stakes involved. They're really tossing each other around. There's like you can see in the credit sequence, like that they really did get injured. Performing some of these movements, and it shows. Like some of these movements are not. They look dangerous, and they're doing it for the art, right? And it's very intense, very well done. I think overall, I'd say that if I had to choose between those two, because they're so similar in my mind, I'd choose Fight Over Evil 2.
Fight Against Evil 2, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's interesting because you're right. They are kind of similar because they incorporate regular stand-up fighting in addition to the grounded grappling, BJJ style stuff. And I think in terms of just a visual, Fight Against Evil 2 is probably more maybe not interesting. It's probably more preferred because it's less number of moves. It's actually a lot simpler. And so when your eyes are really just focusing on it, you can take it in a lot easier. Where in Bad City, you have Kensuke Sonomura doing the direction, probably the action direction as well. Mm-hmm. And when you see what he did with Hydra, where it was so many combinations in all these long takes, he's doing the same thing here. Like these guys are just throwing so many hits. They're doing so much grappling. It's so much more information to register versus Fight Against Evil 2. Right. So it's one of those things like, okay, well, what kind of fight guy are you? Like, do you like the more complicated combinations in choreography? So it's like, okay, maybe look to Bad City because that's a little more technical in terms of the fight. Whereas Fight Against Evil 2 is probably a little more cinematic. They simplified it down so that like they're still doing grappling, but it's not as intense and is not as involved as Bad City.
I'd still say that Bad City still had it was still very cinematic for sure, but maybe I don't know, but they really are very similar. Like when I close my eyes and I think about those two fight scenes, one's like very bright and it's a very bright environment, and the other one's like very drab and in the dark, but really like they're both excellent fight scenes. Like I can't really stress that enough. I just for Bad City we have to cut back and forth between the fight between
Tak and Masanori,
and Tak, so like if it didn't do that, I think that Bad City might actually get the win.
If it didn't do that, the fight I think is like 5 minutes long. It's a long fucking fight.
It's still great. Still great. So I guess I kind of lied. I think those are the two I'd choose. But so I don't know which. I didn't know for a long time like which one to rank higher. But like I think talking it out just now kind of helped.
Uh-oh. Does that mean we need to now talk about the bad movies we watched this year? Is that our segue?
That is our segue.
About the worst and the most disappointing fights of 2023. Are we saving this for the Patreon section?
Yeah, because I know a lot of you guys love negativity, so we're gonna hide that behind a paywall. No, I'm kidding. All right. Is that every movie for this year that we've talked about or seen or whatever?
Yeah. Well, that's all the worst. Those are the, I guess, like what, the fist of fail. I guess you could
fail.
say.
Look, We actually tied it into the name of the show, and then now people won't actually people will stop asking why is your podcast called that.
It's because at the end of the year we also talk about the worst movies, the worst fights. So that's the worst of 2023. Hooray, we made it.
Yeah,
we did it.
Yeah, and again, we have a lot to look forward to in the new year. Hopefully, we get more, like more gems, less stinkers. Still want to talk about the stinkers, but we're definitely gonna have more. We're gonna be able to curate our movies going forward. So I'm definitely looking forward to 2024. I think I have a couple movies already like lined up that I'm very curious to watch. And I'm definitely gonna watch out a lot of these recommends from all you guys. So oh my god. Please send us more recommendations if you guys are listening right now, because I want to watch less apocalypse stirring changes. I want to watch better movies going forward. All right, is that a wrap for 2023 though?
Yeah, I think so.
That is. Yeah, we can finally ring in the new year. Yay! And please, feel free to start subscribing to us on YouTube and hit that notification button and all that shit.
No, I would never want to say that to our users, because only idiots would not know to hit a subscribe button or a notification button. Are you an absolute moron?
No, Zero.
You're us to tell you these things.
You're missing the next thing I was gonna say, which is and also this episode is sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends.
Oh God, no!
And you should buy ExpressVPN and all that shit. Yeah, do all that because we're YouTube shills now.